Good morning, everyone. Today we'll talk about economic systems. Now, let's just have a quick review. Let's answer these questions. What are the goods, or what are goods? What are services? What are resources? And what is scarcity? When you talk about goods, these are finished products, and usually these are tangible products that people buy and firms sell. Services are intangible outputs or intangible products like getting a haircut, or getting a massage, or going to a hospital for a checkup. Resources, on the other hand, are also called inputs, or sometimes we call them factors of production. These are being used to produce other goods and services. Examples would be land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Scarcity is a concept which means that whenever there is too much demand for a certain resource, there is a possibility that the demand may not be able to, or the supply may not be able to meet the demand, and scarcity happens. So it's a concept wherein a good or a service or a resource is not enough for everybody. Economic systems, on the other hand, are methods used by a society to produce and distribute goods and services. But if the economic system does not follow the free market approach, then it could also be defined as an approach or a method on how the government tells us what we can get and how to get it. So you will understand what I'm trying to say as we discuss the different economic. Now, all economic systems must consider the following questions. Even in microeconomics, we have encountered already these four questions. In micro, these questions are what to buy, how many to buy, for whom to buy, and how to buy. But we're not dealing with microeconomic transactions here. We're talking about a country deciding on its production. So these are the questions that a country must ask. First, what goods and services to produce given its resources? And then how will the country produce these goods and services, knowing that the how question also entails additional expenses. Like if you are going to produce it with machinery, then you have to invest on capital. Or if it's gonna be labor intensive, then you're gonna be spending more on labor services. Then the next question is who will get them? Who will be your beneficiaries? Who will buy, or who will be your target uh, beneficiaries for the goods and services that you intend to produce? Because we know that you cannot produce for everyone. You cannot satisfy everyone. Again, we have to deal with the concept of scarcity. Since you have limited resources, you have to properly decide on what goods and services you should produce, how you should produce these goods and services, who will benefit from your goods and services, and how many or how much will you produce now and how much later. Now, these economic questions or these questions must be answered because we don't have unlimited resources. Each economic system answers these questions in a different way. Now, for example, in a traditional economy, which is the first economic system, we answer economic questions through our habits and customs, the way it has always been done. For example, what do you produce in the Philippines, or what do we produce here in the Philippines? Well, we produce rice, we fish, and why? Because for the longest time we've been doing that. Now, all the other countries, maybe in the West, do not eat as much rice as we do, but here in the Philippines, that is our staple food, and that's why we're producing that. And in a traditional economy, usually, but not always, children work the same jobs that parents work, like farming or hunting or gathering. They fear change. Like for the Eskimos, majority of the Inuit groups are involved with hunting. And for the Amish, their children and even the old ones are heavily involved with agriculture. And they've been doing that because that's what they have been doing for the longest time. The next type of economic system is command economy. Now, the one who answers the questions would be the government. Uh, like how many to produce, what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce. It's the government who usually decides on that matter. The advantages of that is that they're able to quickly act in emergencies because there's one central decision maker, and there's a provider for all people. They provide for all people equally. The disadvantage with that is that it's inefficient. You tend to produce goods that may not be actually needed or wanted by the people. There's no incentive to hard work. There's no incentive to become creative because anyway, why do you have to be creative? Why do you have to be innovative when you know that uh, at the end of the day, the one who decides what to produce, how many to produce, for whom to produce, and how to produce would be the government. Communist countries like China, North Korea, and Cuba usually have a command economy, like the ones who decide on important matters like what goods and services to give to the people, and majority of the businesses are owned by by the government. So that's what the command economy is. It's like private ownership rarely happens, and if there is private ownership, the government still has a lot of say on the decision making. In a free market, this is the third economic system, economic questions are answered by individual buyers and sellers. So here, you do not rely on the government to answer, like to identify what you should sell, what you should produce as a country, or how many you should produce. You don't also rely on your tradition. But in a free market, you allow the market to decide what to produce and what to buy or what to sell. Like, for example, if in a free market, um, sellers usually try to sell things that people want because they know that it will be saleable. There is a market for it. Or even if people do not want it, but there is a chance for them to become creative or innovative, because if they can just create a demand for a product, like people may not necessarily want or need it for now, but if they create something that is attractive enough, then they will be able to create a demand for it. So in a free market, sellers and buyers have the freedom to sell or to buy whatever they want, and in a certain amount or whatever amount that they want to produce. But it doesn't mean that drugs or illegal drugs will be freely sold in that kind of market. There is still government intervention, of course, but uh, kumbaga, you have the full freedom to exercise your innovativeness, your creativity, and your your skill as a businessman. Supply and demand actually influence the economy here. If there is not much demand for it, then sellers normally do not supply the product because they don't see the logic of it. People act out of self interest. Motive for profit or money drives the economy. This is also known as a free enterprise or capitalism. Now, the United States, Western Europe, and Japan are really more into free market economy. There are very, very few regulations from the government, and that's why, as I have mentioned last time, the recession happened and the Great Depression happened because, as much as possible, the United States government do not want to intervene in market activities. Initially, there are three types of economic systems, but there is actually a fourth because no economy is pure market, pure command, or pure traditional. There are mixed economies. Now, I have said earlier that USA follows the free market economy. However, we cannot fully say that they are into a pure free market economy because at some points there are still government interventions. It's just that the interventions are not as heavy as those in a command economy. Also, they produce things according to their tradition. Now, for the command economy, China may have a centralized decision making, but not everything is being decided by the government. A portion of their economic activities are being determined by their buyers and their sellers. and also by, especially the China is into world trade. So their products are also being dictated by what the buyers of the rest of the world want. China also produces using or produce things using tradition or following their traditions. In the Philippines, obviously, we follow the mixed economic system because we buy and produce things according to what the buyers and the sellers want, and also according to what our tradition dictates, our culture dictates, and also we are heavily influenced by what the government wants or what the government dictates. We know that there are so many activities that we do that are being governed by the government. We cannot just produce anything without having, especially when it comes to food, it has to pass through BFAD. There are activities that are being that we cannot just set a price as high as we want, especially if it is a necessity, because the Department of Trade and Industry will check on our pricing. There is a price ceiling, there is a price floor, because we need to protect also the other sellers and the buyers. So that's why in the Philippines, we follow the mixed economic system. While the Philippines is mostly a free market economy, it does have elements of a command economy and a traditional economy. Now, what are the features if you are following a free market economy? Because Philippines mostly follows this, although it is a mixed economy, but usually it follows the free market economy. Well, uh, if you have a free market economy, you have economic freedom. Individuals have the right to choose. The competition is kind of stiff. It's kind of heavy because sellers are able to sell and whatever they want. If and sellers are driven by profit. If they see that this product has a good demand, then the other sellers will also follow. They will be selling the same product. So with heavy competition, you have many choices as a buyer, and quality will be improved, prices will be reduced. That's the good thing with competition. Private property, individuals have the right to own their own property, including a business, because that's something that you can rarely do in a command economy. Self-interest, individuals make decisions based on what is best for them. Like buyers buy because they need that, they want that, and not because that's the only thing that is offered in the market. Voluntary exchange, individuals may freely buy and sell goods. Profit motive, individuals are driven by a desire to make profit or to make money. So for the sellers, they really enjoy it if it's a sorry, it says here features of an American free market. Let's say it's features of a free market. Um, in a free market, well, sellers are able to enjoy as much profits as they want, because again, if they see that there's a lucrative business, then there's nobody that will stop them from doing so or from doing that kind of business unless it's illegal. In a command economy, there are government regulations for business practices, like, for example, on wages, there is a minimum wage, labor hours are being set, like in the Philippines, the regular labor working hours is 8 per day. Safety practices are also being observed, and the government limits certain choices on goods and services. There are goods and services that you cannot just simply buy or produce. There are also goods and services that you may produce. However, you should be able to get a permit first from the government before you commercialize it. Then the good thing about a command economy is that the government provides aid to the needy, like in Medicare, Medicaid, or child welfare services. Now, how do we know, or how do we distinguish how our business operates when we operate it in a generally command economy, in a mix, in a generally free market economy, or in a traditional economy? So how would my pizzeria function under different economic systems? In a free market, this is how I answer the basic questions. I determine how much cheese and pepperoni goes on the pizza. because it's my decision. I have freedom. I determine the quality of the cheese and the pepperoni. And I set my employees' wages. I set my business hours. In other words, I have full command. I, as a business owner, can decide on whatever I want. In a command economy, well, if I operate my pizzeria there, the government answers the basic economic questions. It's not me. The government sets the amount of cheese and pepperoni on each pizza. The government determines the quality of cheese and pepperoni. The government sets employees' wages. And the government sets business hours. So it's not my decision to make, it's the government's decision. But the question is, what does the government know about pizza? So that's why, in a command economy, it's somehow inefficient because it's the government making the decisions, but it's not entirely what the people want, or it's not entirely, or probably the government does not have enough knowledge on how to deliver this product best. In a mixed economy, it will be the government and I who will answer the basic economic questions. Like, for example, I determine the amount of cheese and pepperoni on the pizzas, but the government determines the quality of cheese and the pizza. I set employee wages, but the government sets minimum wage for employees. I determine business hours, but the government determines whether I am safe to be open or not. So, therefore, in a mixed economy, I get to have my own say, and the government also has its own say because the government wants to protect me and the buyers. So that's how a mixed economy works, and which is why we we believe that a mixed economy works best. Kay wala ang freedom, the entire freedom is not given to the sellers. In that way, there is like a protection being provided to the buyers. And although may portions ng ilang freedom ang gina-curtail, but still they can exercise freedom to a certain extent or to a certain length. There is still a portion or an opportunity for them to become creative, to become innovative, or to become more business minded. So that's the beauty of a mixed economy. And that's all for this topic.